just a little introduction in what we'll be talking about. Hi, Mishka. Um, by the time we get into the details of the data and what that looks like and what we're looking for, I think everybody who wants to join us should probably be joining us. Of course, anybody who has signed up, whether they manage to join in person or not, will also be getting a recording of this afterwards. So if anything gets missed because of a late sign up or technical issues, you'll still have access to everything we're talking about. Great. So we'll get started. Today it's just Ingrid and I on from the Neuralign side, along, of course, with our amazing marketing team who's helped us put this webinar together and keep us organized and keep track of all of the registrations and recordings and all of that. And I apologize for the background noise, but my cat seems to have found a box that's very interesting and wants to scratch it right behind me. So hopefully she gets bored with that moment and leaves it be. Um, so again, most of you know Ingrid and I quite well already. Some of you have been with us for many years. Some of you are new to the Neuralign journey. Most of you we've met and we've had conversations with. So you know Ingrid and I. Ingrid and I are, of course, co-founders of Neuralign, and we've been on this journey, just like most of you, of helping struggling readers learn how to read now for many, many years. So the purpose of today's webinar, again, this is the third webinar in our provider series, and the purpose of today's webinar is to talk about data and scores. So that's going to be interesting for our new providers and instructors, as well as our long-term providers, because we've done a lot of work in the portal in terms of how we're representing and collecting data. And so that information is going to be relevant to everybody because you're going to want to know what's new and how to look at it and how to interpret it. And then importantly, how you can use that data to help your students along through the program, what kind of things to look out for, and also what you're looking for when you're communicating with parents to know if there's been an improvement. Of course, there are going to be a lot of factors to look at when deciding if there's been improvement or not. But we're going to give you a few key things to look at in the students' results and in their scores that should help you be able to communicate with parents thoroughly so that they have an understanding of what's been going on. And then after that, we're going to talk about upcoming sessions and topics that we're going to have, and then we'll leave some time at the end to go over questions that anybody might have. So why does data matter? So data matters for a few reasons. From a provider standpoint, we're really looking to see where the strengths and challenges are early on within the program, because it helps us to identify if the student is struggling with a certain part of the program. So we will go through a full walkthrough of the portal later and show you where you can find all of these data points. But some to look for are general growth within the cognitive therapy. So in the cognitive therapy sessions, we have designed it so that if the student is doing the program correctly, their scores should have a general upward trend. That doesn't mean that there might be a session that they don't go down a little bit, but it does mean that overall, they should be increasing in their scores as long as they are doing the program correctly. The reason that we designed the program this way is because, as many of you know, the students who come to see us oftentimes are already feeling resistant to instruction. They have already tried a number of different programs and not seen success. And so we need to ensure, in order for them to maintain their motivation and feel encouraged to do the program, that they see their scores going up. So what we want from the students during the cognitive therapy session portion of the program, all we want from them is to sit and go through the program to the best of their abilities. So long as they're doing that part, that's their job, they will be rewarded with their scores going up. There are a few things right within the program that will encourage them to continue getting higher scores. As you know, they get stars and different versions of stars, depending on once they get to 500 points, they get a different star. Once they get 1,000 points, they get a different star. So that encourages them to try to collect as many stars as they can. Recently, we have also added that their high score, so their highest score from a game, will be displayed. So it gives them the opportunity to know what they're working towards and trying to beat. That helps keep their motivation. The point of the scoring system through the cognitive therapy is not to identify whether they're making progress in their reading. The point of the scoring system during the cognitive therapy is entirely for the student's motivation and for the provider to be able to assess whether the student is doing the program properly or not. So this is where, as a provider, when you're looking at your students' scores, especially if you're working with a number of students at one time, or if they're doing some of it at home, this will give you a good indication of whether they're doing what they're supposed to be doing on their end. If you notice that their scores have been going down, and again, consistently, if one session it goes down a little bit, we're not too concerned. But if there seems to be a downward trend or not an upward trend, even if there's progress and it's stalled out, then we want to investigate further. And what we're looking for then is we will open up and we'll do a walkthrough here. We'll look at all of where to find all of this. We want to open up their so that we see the breakdown of each game that they've done in the session, because that will help us start investigating where they might be struggling. Sometimes what they're struggling with, for example, we might look and we might notice that they've gotten a lower score than normal in the Pig Latin, right? That gives us the opportunity as a provider to say, okay, there must be something here that they're not understanding. Let's sit down with them and go over again, make sure they understand the formula for the Pig Latin for next time. If we notice that the score is going down consistently in pinball or in any of the games with the sound parcels, we might need to have a conversation with them and figure out what's going on there. So it just gives us the opportunity early on to address what might be causing the problem with the score going down, or just to evaluate that they're doing the program properly. If we notice early on in the sessions that the student is really struggling and that they're having a hard time and we're working with them and they're not going up in scores despite the fact that they're trying their best, that might give us an indication as a provider that they need to be moved levels. Perhaps the level is a little bit too challenging for them, or in an opposite way, maybe it's not challenging enough and they're zoning out and they need a little bit more challenge. That's something then that we need to evaluate as a provider, but watching those scores is going to help make sure that we're on top of that early on within the program. Okay. So then I want to move on to allowing us to track their progress. Okay. And now what kind of progress are we looking for? For most of us, we're using Neuralign as a reading intervention tool. So the progress we're looking for is in reading. If you are using it in the case of an autistic student, ADHD student, we know we have some providers who use it for cerebral palsy. Obviously, you will be looking for different markers. I'm going to stick with talking about the reading progress for this webinar, since that's the core of what Neuralign was designed for. So when we're looking to figure out whether the student is progressing in their reading, that we start to look for once they start with the speed reading. So the cognitive therapy scores are not going to give us an indication of whether their reading is improving. Those scores, as I mentioned, give us the indication of whether they're completing the program properly. Once we get into the speed reading, Now they have the base from the cognitive therapy, and their brain is now ready to start with the task of reading, and we're ready to start pushing them and seeing what they can do when they've been struggling for a while. So the speed reading scores will give us a good indication of whether there's progress or not. So that's the first thing. When we're looking at the speed reading scores, as you know, when it comes to speed reading, the students will have the same story for 5 days. We're not, for our own self and for our parent, for when we're talking to parents, we don't really care about day 1 to day 5. When we're working with the students, we want to encourage them. Oh my goodness, look how many more words you read today than yesterday. That's amazing. But from a data standpoint, what's interesting to us is day 1 to day 1. So every time they get a new story is what we're looking for. Okay. So once they get through multiple stories, they should, in theory, be going up in their word count. And that gives us an indication of now, are they finally starting to be able to pick up the skill of reading? Is the reading coming? Is the fluency coming? Once the reading exercises come, then we have another metric that we can look at, especially in terms of when there are comprehension questions, because it's great to have the reading fluency, but if we don't have the comprehension that goes along with it, there's still something that's lacking. So we do want to see the comprehension questions start going up as well. So those are 2 data points that we can look at. One of the things that is part of our research that we had done with Carleton University, they looked at all of the data. They did a full data analysis of all of the students who did speed reading. And they found that the students improved an average of reading 50% more words after 10 weeks of speed reading when they did the cognitive therapy burst. So it really can give us a good indication of the improvement in reading once we get to the speed reading. The third area built into the program that we can look at to see if there's been an improvement, of course, is the assessments. So the assessment as it is, it's not an independent assessment. It's not a diagnostic tool. It is a placement assessment that was designed to put the student on the appropriate level for their abilities. But we do have it there just to give us some more information. A lot of you, especially if you work in your own center, will probably also have your own assessment tools. So that is fantastic, because whenever we can use a third-party tool, that's even better. It just takes that conflict of interest out and gives a little bit more confidence to the parents that we're not rigging the results in their favor. But it's still a good indicator to include with any other assessments that you might be doing within your own center or within your schools. So one of the changes that we're going to be making relatively soon, we've got all the information, we're just finalizing it before it goes live, is right now the assessment that they do 3 times is the same assessment. We now have it, we're going to have it very shortly so that all 3 assessments are a little bit different. They'll all follow the same formula. They all follow the same level of difficulty through the questions, but the questions themselves are going to be different. So that's going to give us an even better understanding of the improvements that are made. Again, it's not a third-party assessment, but any information that we can get is helpful when we're talking to parents and students. Okay, so very shortly, we're going to share her screen, and we're going to do the walkthrough of the portals. Now we're going to be looking at a provider portal. I know we have a couple of people here from schools. All of the data that we have in the provider portals and in the school portals are accessible in both. It's just the way that they're organized is a little bit different from one to the other. So if you need some help if we haven't covered the school portal and you want some extra help with that, let us know, and we can certainly send you some more information on that. But all of the information is going to be there, and a lot of it is the same. So, Ingrid, do you want to have just share your screen? Oh, your microphone is off.
Okay. Sorry, I have not tested on Zoom how to get on, so um,
There
press,
should be a share button at the bottom.
yeah,
There you go.
perfect. Great. Hi, everyone. My turn. Let me just get set up here. Great. So when we are, go here. So this is a dashboard. Again, it's a training dashboard. So the data is not real data. So I can share it and we're not worried about anything. Um, And mine will look a little bit different than yours will because I just have more permissions. So don't worry about the tabs or anything like that. There are two places to go and see the data when you're trying to see what's going on. The first place, which we'll go to, of course, is the game page. And so you go into your student's game page. And here you will see you're able to go to the results. So let's start with the assessment. So we have one assessment done, completed. And what you would do to see the actual scores is you open up the graph and you click on the graph. And then we have the scores of the assessment. So what are we looking for? Well, on the top of here, we do have a grid. So there were 46 answered, three were not answered, and those three actually, they count the samples as well as part of them. There are 43
Oh,
questions in total, plus the three questions that are samples. Um, and then so the three that were skipped were the three samples. It'll tell you right away what is wrong and what is not, how many are incorrect as well. Now, there's a few things that I like to look at when I look at the graphs, and that is what, so if we have a student, for instance, who scored maybe 20 the first assessment, and then they do the second assessment and they got 15. So
mm,
we want to know how come they dropped.
mm,
And normally what we'll notice is that actually the 15 is a true 15 scores. You could tell by the timing, which we have for everyone here, that they took their time, they answered, and maybe it's the first 20 questions they've scored correct, and 15 out of those 20 were correct. Whereas if we look at the one for the 20, they maybe got to number 35, and out of the 35, they got 20. But then what we can look at is how long did it take them to answer those questions? Well, we know somebody who's struggling and who's 8 years old, they're not getting to 35 or 40 questions. If they are, they don't need our program. So that means that they're guessing, right? So if you see that, oh, like every third one or fourth one is not correct, and then they have one that's correct, that's telling us that they're not reading, they're guessing. We had one student that we worked with last year at the school. Erica, do you want to speak about him?
Yes, I'll speak about him for sure. He's actually a great example for this. So, we had one student at the school. He was 7 years old, um, diagnosed with a reading disorder, and as well as was autistic and ADHD. And when we worked with him, when he did the first assessment, he got four answers correct. I sat with him while he did the assessment, and if I was assessing him personally and not through the computer, he would have gotten a zero because he was clearly not reading anything. It was lucky guesses. He was unable to focus at all, and this is not a criticism of the child, it was his profile. He was physically unable to focus. He was unable to understand what he was supposed to be doing other than that there were buttons and he was clicking. Um, And so he clicked through, and as his click throughs, he ended up getting four lucky guesses that happened to be correct before I ended up stopping him and we put it aside. He did the Neuralign program, and I sat with him for his assessment that he did after the cognitive therapy. We ran out of time again. It was a school setting, so he didn't do the full speed reading or reading exercises, so he never got to the third assessment. But at the second assessment, I sat with him to do it again. And it was like there was a whole different child in front of me. He understood what he was supposed to be doing. He was sounding out words. He was paying attention to what he was looking at and what he was reading. He needed very little redirection, a little bit here and there. We don't mind that. We know the type of kids that we're working with. We had a few side conversations as he was doing them, but it's okay. For the most part, he was able to stay focused and answer. And he ended up actually doubling his score. He got to an 8, which may not sound amazing, but it was amazing because the first time he really should have had a 0, and then he got to 8. I actually, in that case, if I was scoring him myself, would have been tempted to give him a 9 because for example, one of the questions, there's a picture of a rose, and there we have rose written, it's right there actually there. We have rose written two ways, so ROWS and ROSE. And he sounded them all out and he picked the first one. So phonetically, he wasn't incorrect, which is huge because again, the first time he was reading not at all nothing. So that is where, as a provider or as a teacher or as an educator, that's where your expertise comes in. That's where our value comes in. Because whereas Neuralign is a program that, the work does itself, there is value in what we bring to the table as professionals when we're working with these students and in the observations that we're making. And then, of course, as we can explain it to parents so that we can explain what we saw. If the parent was looking at this on their own without knowing what to look for, they would have just seen, okay, 4 questions the first time and 8 the second time, 4, it's still double, but 8's still not great. But if you look at the difference of the skills that developed in that very short amount of time, it was an absolute night and day difference. So we have to take this data, and the data doesn't give the answers. We still have to interpret it. We still have to use our professional expertise to look at the student and to look at how they're interacting with the program and how they're answering questions to get a whole picture of their improvements.
Great. Thanks, Erica. So that's the assessment on the game page, how you would find it. Cognitive therapy, the results are like the graph that comes up. You can open the full chart. And so now the full chart has a little bit more information. It talks about when the program was done, or how many times during the week we have, and this we're going to be expanding as well, just for your information. It's not there yet, but it's coming. So that we'll have a button that we can click and see the full program of when they did the program. We have here is your scores. Now we see the one that was done early this morning. They got a lot of zeros. So we were going to try and find out why. Was it a glitch? Were they not engaged? Were they not paying attention? So those are some of the things that we want to look at. And we can also do it by looking at the full graphs here. So what I would do in this case, because this was a higher score than this score. So where did they have the difficulties? Well, I see pinball, so we know that's a sound parcel. So the sound parcels, then sometimes they're just not engaged because the sound parcels should either be very close to the following score or it should be going up. And in this case, because it went down, so we've got to pay attention, then they might be losing engagement. Egypt. Okay, so Egypt went down quite a bit. Now, because I'm the one who did this this one like yesterday, I know what happened with Egypt. I couldn't find a word. And even with my hint, I couldn't find it. So I was like, So I lost a lot of points that way. And that will happen for Egypt and Holland, because sometimes students just they're stuck. They can't find it. So in this case, that was the one of the reasons. Um, but yeah, so it's something we'll watch out for and see. We do have the hint. We did add that, which has allowed, because we don't want students who to stay stuck on any gameplay. We want them to be able to continue. So if you're working with the student and you see they're stuck, by all means, you can help them find the word. You can, all of that is okay because we want them to continue to move up, and that engagement is there as well. Mosaics should basically stay the same. Scotland here we saw too was a little bit lower. Australia, oh, I got a lot lower on a lot of them. Oh, not honeycomb. Honeycomb is better. That one got higher. And that we want to watch too, because if they're going down on the mosaics and the honeycomb, then again, the engagement is not the same. Or they're having trouble with their tracking. And we see that a lot on those ones because that's the left, right, right, left. And so sometimes the students, especially as the graphs get larger, their eyes might start watering because we're really working on that tracking, the teaming and the tracking of the visual component. Um, and then the rest we see again, Holland 2 went down quite a bit as well. So, but that was just because I was going quick then. So yeah, so that's how you would check. If you see a lot of zeros, that we have to question. There should be no zeros. So what could create the zeros? Well, one is if the student is just not doing it, and then that's a case. Or sometimes it's a glitch. So if you see a zero, I would question to the student, like, what happened in pinball yesterday, or if you're with the student, like you can question that. And if they say, oh, pinball didn't show up, then we know that something happened on our back end. Please just send us a message on support to let us know so we can investigate. One thing I learned with technology is that you never know what what can happen next. So it's a beast that we're always staying on top of. So like I said, please let us know. Um, so that it, oh, sorry, let me go back to full results here. Was there anything else? No, that's it for the graph here. And so speed reading and reading exercises. So let's go here to the results for the reading exercises. If you go onto full graph, you'll see here next to the reading column, there is a little eye. If you click on that, it gives you the story and the question. So this was 20 correct questions answered. And then it'll tell you what the score is. If it's wrong, it'll be red and it'll show you what the correct score is. And again, that's for your knowledge to see maybe, um, how far they got, what stories maybe gave them some difficulty. Maybe it's something that needs to be addressed with them. If we see a specific area that, at the beginning, for instance, where they have find the missing word or things like that, you might just see a pattern of something that they might need more work on. We often ask what is a vowel, how many vowels? Well, it's quite surprising to find out how many students don't know what a vowel is. So we are going to be putting in another like a little question mark, the thing, so students can click it and it'll tell them what a vowel is. We didn't think of adding that, but it was just recently that we discovered that there are children who actually don't know what the vowels are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So this will help. But maybe that's then something that needs to be, you as the instructor needs to go back and discover. And then the speed reading, of course. So let's go out of here. And the speed reading, so we always have the 5 different colors per graph, and then you would always look for the same day. Now, when we open here, the full graph, it is like it comes like this with the total. So we don't see quite as much as we do when they're lined up on top. Maybe that's something we can add in the future as well. Just like the cognitive therapy has it all lined up. But really what you're looking for is the Monday to the Monday all the way through, or the first day, I should say, to the first day all the way through. So that's one place to find the information. And the other one, of course, is on our dashboard. So let me just. So here on the dashboard, we have, first of all, you would look at the category. And so the categories are your assessment, speed reading, reading exercises, and cognitive therapy. And then we have the overview, what happened during the week or today, the day and the week, the scores trending up, low frequency. Those are the students who haven't completed or the program, the ones that aren't started, and the ones who have 0 scores. What we can do here then is go into the student. You can find the student's name here. So I think I was with student January. So here we go. So this is the student that we just looked at. And what you would do then is click the more information. And then you can scroll down. So here we have the scoring of that have the bonus points, and underneath the metric is just the raw score. So that means no bonus points added. We just want to see really how many they completed without the bonus points. And then this will again indicate when they've completed the program. We have the large summary here, and then here we have the scores. When you see that they're in red, it means that they're below average. We have an average score here, and the level by 15% or more of similar people in the P3 area average. And then it just, and what we're trying to do is get them out of red and go into the green or black. And that's something that you can take a look at as well. For the cognitive therapy, I'm sorry, for the, let's go the reading exercise. So these are
I'm so tired.
What we've done, and here it will show when they've completed it. And again here too, for the reading comp questions, you can click on the eye and that will show you the reading comp information. And the same then will go for the speed reading too, and assessment. All of them can be found here, showing the same data as what we saw on the graph, on the student graph. Again here. And on average, so here they just show the speed reading scores. Yeah, so that is how you find your different the different information in the 2 places that we have. Are there any questions? Okay, then I will stop sharing and I will pass it on to Erica.
Perfect. So we are almost done, and we'll make sure that we leave time for everyone to ask any questions they might have. I did just want to add very quickly that last dashboard that Ingrid showed. You may have noticed it gives a full list of all of the students. That's really useful if you have a center with a high volume of students that are doing Neuralign, or you're within a school, because it allows you to have a very quick glance right away if one of the students might be having problems, because right there it will tell you when they've done their last session and whether they've gone up or down in score. So you can see right there immediately, if you notice that the students that you have a student that's down in score, you can investigate it further without having to worry about investigating dozens of students that may not be having issues. Obviously, any teacher or professional who's working with the student should have an eye on them anyways, but it does give you the ability to see everybody very quickly. Okay, so now let's talk about using this data and communicating with parents, because obviously parents want to know if their student is seeing progress and if they're seeing success, and how can you help them to understand what you're looking at and whether they can tell whether their child is improving or not. It's very important. So again, first things first, we don't use the cognitive therapy as part of our metrics for improvement. So that's not something you can look at it with the parents, but under the understanding that that is a metric of whether the student is completing the program, not whether they're improving their reading. We did cover this already a little bit. I got ahead of myself in the previous slides talking about the speed reading. That is an excellent metric for going through parents, looking at day one to day one when you talk with parents and explain to them what they're doing to look at those scores and see them going up. What are we talking about with parents when we talk about speed reading? Speed reading in the context of Neuralign, the way it is right now, is about fluency. Okay, so it's not a comprehension tool, and it's not at this point an accuracy tool. That is something, again, that we are actually looking into, having it so that as they read, it counts how many words they read correctly. Unfortunately, it's not an exact science, and it's hard to account for things like different accents and things like that. We don't want students being punished for having a different accent than the computer recognizes. So we're being very careful about introducing that technology, but it is something that's in the pipeline. If you're working with the student ahead of time and you want, or personally one-on-one, it's certainly something that you can look at. But from our data standpoint, what we look at is how many words they've read in a minute. So that is exactly what it looks like. So the purpose of the speed reading, that is important also to explain to parents, even if we're not looking at the accuracy of the words, the purpose of the speed reading is to move our students out of the chronic state of decoding. So a lot of struggling readers spend so much time trying to learn how to focus and decode, and they get stuck in that decoding loop where they are over sounding out all of their words and it just does not come fluently. That is early stage reading. And that is an important foundation of reading, but it's not where we stay with our reading. So when we're a fluent reader and a successful reader, we are not constantly decoding every word that we see. Speed reading helps to move students into that fluency and automatization of their reading now that they have the neurological foundations to be able to complete that skill through the cognitive therapy. So that's important to explain to parents as well. And then again, the other two metrics that I would go over with parents would be the reading comp. And again, that's important to look at the numbers and understand them a little bit before you meet with parents. Always have an understanding of where the student's at. If they've gone up in scores, to make sure they're truly going up and answering accurately. If they've gone down in scores, investigate a little bit and see if maybe their first score was not a true score, as Ingrid gave examples earlier, that perhaps there was a little bit of lucky guessing and speeding through. Those are all things that are important to understand before you meet with a parent. And then frame growth is both academic and emotional success. That's really important for a number of reasons. And I'm going to touch on a few things to look for here and talk about with parents. One of the very first things that we hear so consistently from parents is that their student is in a better mood at home, that their student is not fighting about their homework as much, that their child, sorry, is asking to read with them maybe for the first time instead of fighting them with the skill of reading. Those things are important to note because it's an indication that the child themselves is starting to feel a difference. When that resistance starts to melt away, it's because they're noticing something. Even if they're not fully aware of it or verbalizing it, they're noticing it. It's a little bit easier and therefore they're not as resistant to doing it. So that's something really important to look for. Is the child bringing the parent a book and asking to read together? Are they asking to sound things out? Are they not giving as much pushback? Are they better behaved in school? Right? We know that a lot of children who struggle in some way will act out at school because behavior is communication and they're struggling and they're miserable and they're going to make everyone else miserable too because it's hard to be always in a good mood when things are hard all the time. So they might get feedback from the teacher that they've been better behaved in school. They're not getting into arguments as much. They're not getting as much resistance at school. Those things are just as important, if not more important, than the raw data and the numbers that we're looking at through the program.
The one thing that we hear all the time, sorry, Erica, too,
Yes.
is they're reading the cereal boxes or they're reading the billboards as they're going by. So that's always very interesting too,
Yes.
whereas they never did that before.
We hear that almost every time, actually. It's really it's amazing how frequently that's the first feedback we'll get, even usually before they're finished the cognitive therapy. Usually about halfway through, the parents will reach out to us and say, "Oh, well, I was driving down the street and they read the street sign." They've never done that before. Or we were walking through the grocery store and they were reading the cereal boxes. They've never done that before. And that is such a consistent piece of feedback we get from students early on in their Neuralign journey we'd be silly not to mention it. So those are things that are worth looking for, but also getting your parents to look out for when they start Neuralign. You can let them know this is something that people notice very early on. That is a sign that they're finally able to, and they're doing it in a safe environment, right? It can be stressful to sit in front of a class and read in front of your peers and in front of the teacher and worry about your grades if you get a word wrong and all of those things. But it's a low pressure environment when you're at the grocery store with your parents who you trust, and you can sort of test out your new skills on a cereal box. So that's often where they'll start. So those are things that we really encourage you to get the parents of your children to look out for and to report back to you as well, so that you're aware of those little signs that start early on when the reading is starting to improve. So that is it for our data. We still have about 10 minutes for questions, which is perfect. Just wanted to let you know that we are going to be having our next webinar on March 12th. So we'll send out information to everybody again, just like you got information for this webinar, to sign up for that. And this is going to be a webinar that will help you explain Neuralign to clients and parents who might be resistant. As you know, Neuralign comes at reading issues from a completely different angle than what people are generally used to. People are also very saturated with tons of, I know when I scroll on my Facebook, I get ads all the time about games and cures and stuff for dyslexia and reading issues. So people are just oversaturated. So being empowered to explain exactly what Neuralign is and what it does and why it can be beneficial is important for everybody. And that's really what we're going to be going through in the next session on March 12th.
Are there any questions? We'll open the floor to everybody. Okay.
Good. So we can give everybody 10 minutes back on their day then?
Hang on, I have one question.
Yes.
Where you are, you talked about, just let me find it. When you were going to add when the student had done the program. Are you intending to include dates there, or is it still just the days of the week?
Oh, sorry, when you're talking where I'll be adding for the speed reading or
Yeah,
the
for all of them where we have the Monday to like we have the days of the week and there's an X or a check mark in those days of the week to see when they did it.
Well, so I looked up recently. I went into the cognitive therapy. I wanted to go back and see and just review again how the student had done it, if he had, because I'd looked at his graph and that was consistently up. But I wanted to see if there was anything that would show that he was later on losing motivation or losing interest, or was he doing something funny that he didn't do it completely. But I couldn't, what I was looking for was dates that he'd done it, and I didn't access that.
right. So the only place right now we have the actual date. I'm going to share my screen again and go back to that to show you where everybody can see. Perfect.
Yes.
So I believe, oh, hang on. First, let's go. I think in the cognitive therapy now, I don't know if we have it in the speed reading. I'll double check.
Yeah.
If you go to the student's game page, I
Yes, there was a
believe,
date. See, we have dates here, right up
Oh,
here.
okay, that's helpful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so we do have the dates up there. What I'm
Okay.
hoping to do, like I said here, and Adele only now just because you said it, because I didn't think about it before, is that, hopefully we can do a click and open up a calendar, and that calendar then will be clicked, right? We'll have a check mark or an X of when they did it, so we can see like the full month
Yeah,
of when they've done it, and it'll be the month that they're in that they
great.
completed it. But for now, I do know we have them all on here. I'm not sure for the speed reading. Why don't we go take a look? But if not, we'll get that added then. Yeah, see the speed. Oh no, here helps if I go into the graph. Oh, the speed reading has it as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. Appreciate it.
Adele, you're always our cheerleader. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. We're missing David.
Yes.
So perfect. Well, great. If anybody has any questions or anything, you know where to reach us, and we'll be happy to answer.
Okay.
thanks everyone.
Thank you.